mini skirt on, dip my body in glitter. Platform sneakers, all the boys want a picture. Two foreign cars, I make rich look richer. Save your breath, baby, I'm not going home with ya. Mini skirt on, dip my body
Hello,
in
hello,
glitter.
hello. You're now tuned in to the A Little Bit A Lot podcast. I'm your host, Kristen. And this week, I've got a fantastic guest. She is lit on TikTok. She's got over 200K, and I feel like she's a fellow Twilight queen. We've got Corinne.
Oh, thank you so much for that lovely intro.
Yes. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Worked a little bit today, made sure that I was prepared for this pod because I was really excited about this episode specifically.
Yeah.
Because you're a knowledgeable girly.
Thank you.
All things TikTok. If you guys are not following her online, like, what are you doing?
Oh,
Like,
thank you.
I cannot believe that, like, you have so much knowledge of not just Twilight lore, but you talk about other things on your platform too.
Yeah.
Like other shows. Like, what are the other shows that you discuss?
So, I talk about like lots of stuff here and there, but I feel like the other thing that people know me for, if it's not Twilight, is The Summer I Turned Pretty, which I always say is just Twilight if Edward and Jacob were wealthy brothers with a beach house in New England.
Ooh.
So basically also Twilight. So
I really need to get into that.
You do.
Like, I don't know why I was so behind on the wave. I remember one summer when they were promoting it like crazy, and I'm just like, dang, like, I feel like I'm missing something.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
I felt like the main character would annoy me, but then again, like, what's new? Bella's
Right,
annoying
exactly.
too.
It's just Belly instead of Bella, so same
Oh,
thing.
I didn't even realize that was her name.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Uh-huh.
The resemblance is crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, I always appreciate your content. I feel like even though I've been a Twihard for such a long time, I still feel like there's things that like I forgot about or didn't even realize that you are always bringing up on your platform.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, guys, keep the questions coming in because I'd be wanting to know just as much as everybody else. Like, what are her thoughts? What are like your takes on the movies? And the saga is just so interesting. So
Thank you.
We live for that. So like I said, if you guys aren't following her, make sure you follow her. I'll make sure that I, put everything in the description for this episode. But today we're here to talk about Eclipse. This is my favorite movie out of the whole saga.
Oh, okay.
So what is yours?
New Moon, for sure.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting. I don't know why I thought yours was going to be Eclipse too.
Honestly, okay, so the thing is, like, I talk a lot of like trash about Eclipse, but Eclipse actually like kind of is my second favorite.
Yeah.
Like it's like I do like Eclipse too, and I get why it's your favorite, actually. I can totally see that. I only haven't like I am only like gobsmacked when people say like one of the Breaking Dawn movies are their favorite. Like Eclipse makes total sense to me.
Right. Yeah. I feel like it's like you know what? I'm not even gonna throw shade at anybody. If your favorite is Breaking Dawn, then whatever. But I don't know. Well, that's really good to hear that at least it's like your second runner up. I don't know why this one is my favorite, but it just always is. Like out of every movie, I find myself going back to Eclipse the most to rewatch it. So I was just like, yeah, let's get into it. So with Eclipse, before we go into it, I also wanted to ask you, how long have you been a Twihard?
Oh my god, since 2006. Ooh. Like, yeah, I was in like
OG.
Yeah, OG. Before there were any movies, I was like, I don't know, like 10 or 11, and I started reading the books just because I like thought the cover was pretty, and I was a huge Twilight fan. I was on all the forums and stuff. Yeah, and it's not much has changed since then, and I've always been the Twilight girl. I always say, like, I always tell the story about how when I was a senior in high school, we did this thing called the senior roast, which sounds like very like toxic, and it was, but it was like when like the junior class would like basically like do a skit and like make fun of the senior class, and like the way that they like signified that they were me is that they started like talking really ridiculously about Twilight. So like I've always been associated with Twilight like my whole like as long as I can remember.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Not the people in the school clocking you being a Twilight girl.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known whether to be insulted or flattered.
I mean, I feel like I'm flattered because, I've like signed up for it,
Right. Oh my God. No, I love when I get to meet people who have been fans for that long because
Yeah.
I've been a fan since 2011,
Well,
2012.
that was like the peak of it. Like that makes total sense.
Yeah, because I was just talking about on the previous episode when I talked about New Moon that like I hadn't known anything about the movies because I remember in 2008 all the girlies were reading it in school, but I felt like I was still kind of like reading my Diary of a Wimpy Kid like era. I wasn't ready
Okay,
to
yeah.
elevate yet. So
Yeah.
then by the time I was like sophomore, junior in high school, then I'm like, okay, maybe I'll get into it. And then for some reason I went to see Breaking Dawn Part 1 in the theaters and had no clue what Twilight was about. Hadn't read any of the books, didn't know what was
Wow.
going on, and I'm like, she turns to a vampire? And then that started it all. And then I went back, read all the books, watched
Oh
all the
my
movies.
God.
So I always say, like, I'm glad that I got to be a part of it towards the last two movies,
Yeah.
to see that moment in theaters. But it still feels like it's been a long time coming, even since 2012. Like, it seems like that year was just a second ago.
It
Like, how
really
is it already
does.
2024?
I'm flabbergasted that was, that long ago
Literally.
now.
I know. And like now, like you said,
Oof.
during that time, that was a peak moment in 2011, 2012. But now I feel like we're getting peak again.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I feel like now as the saga is like moving to different platforms,
Mhm.
Hulu, stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
wasn't it on Netflix for a while, I think?
Yeah, it was. I
Um,
remember like that was around the time where like I started like people like started paying a lot of attention to like my videos was when Twilight went back on Netflix because everybody was talking about it a couple years
right.
ago.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that time. So I feel like every time when it's time for my yearly rewatch, I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
what platform is on now? Because they love to
Yeah.
switch the platform, and I rewatch. But it's been interesting with like all of the new merch that's been coming out and
Yeah.
like them celebrating the anniversary. It makes you feel old, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm glad that this is still very much alive.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I appreciate the entire saga and like the fact that like they're still giving us new stuff, new DVD sets, all of
Yes.
that. Okay, so now that we've like got that out the way, last question: are you Team Edward or Team Jacob?
I am notoriously forever Team Jacob.
Oh my
The
gosh!
fictional love of my life.
Wait, I love that you're Team Jacob girly.
Hmm.
I feel like in an alternate universe, I am really supposed to be Team Jacob, but unfortunately, I'm stuck. I'm stuck with Edward.
I
I
know
can't get
that
out.
it happens to a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I wish I could be a cool girl and be a Team Jacob girl. Like, I want to be with the cool crowd. I feel like that's what it is. The cool crowd is where Team Jacob is at.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree,
Exactly. So once we go into this Twilight, the third movie, I wanted to talk about the what is it, like the synopsis or whatever the word is called, the overview that they give you on Wikipedia, just in case no one has watched Eclipse. I'm pretty sure you have if you clicked on this video or this podcast, but in case you haven't, it says that danger once again surrounds Bella as a string of mysterious killings terrorizes Seattle and a malicious vampire continues her infernal quest for revenge. Amid the chaos, Bella must choose between her love for Edward and her friendship with Jacob, knowing that her decision may ignite the long simmering feud between vampire and werewolf. I mean, I feel like it kind of wraps it up pretty nicely.
Yeah,
Like, you do realize that, like, yeah, this is kind of that peak moment between vampire and werewolf when we get
definitely.
down to
Eclipse
that
is like
fight.
the yeah,
So, I have my notes here. I've just like when I recently rewatched the movie, I just kind of wrote down different things that stood out to me the most. And the
hmm
first thing when I started watching Eclipse was it's alarming to me that Edward keeps Bella from going to the reservation to see Jacob.
yeah. He is an absolute fucking maniac. I'm sorry, I shouldn't curse, but no, he is
No,
an
I
absolute
agree.
maniac. He, and I. The interesting thing is that they really kind of like toned it down in the film, but he disables her car like to do
Yes.
that like in the book he like enlists Alice to like kidnap her for sure. He was an absolute maniac.
I think we need to be here in this series to really hold Stephanie Meyer accountable, hold these characters accountable,
Yeah.
and Edward is out of control.
Yeah, he is.
Like, what is that to disable her car? Let her go. Let her do what she's gonna do. Like, what is seriously the problem? Like,
Yeah,
I just did not like that. And
for sure
another
not his
moment,
finest.
yeah, I agree. And I think the next moment that, as we are watching the film, that I really liked was when Edward, Alice, and Jasper were at the table with Bella's friends. I feel like that's such a little detail, but those little details I feel like make a big difference. Like, look at you guys with the circle of friends now.
Yeah, they were the Cullens were like trying to cosplay as normal for a minute there.
Yeah.
It was it was definitely cute. Like her little outfit.
Yes. I was just like, okay. And then while they're like sitting at the table, like having their little moment, Jasper's doing really well. So proud of him for pushing through at the table with the
Yeah.
kids. Alice is having visions and stuff. So it gets a little kooky.
Yeah.
But that was one moment that I really did like from the film. And also like fast forwarding to when Jacob ate Bella up. Because I think that this is like a really pivotal moment for us. Because Jacob ate her up when he said, I had nothing to say after she asked why he hadn't called back.
Yeah. And I love that scene too. And I always think about like, so I saw all the movies in theaters, and I always say that like the loudest scream I remember from any of the movies was not like when he takes his shirt off, nothing. It wasn't even like the Carlisle thing in Breaking Dawn. It was that moment like when they drive up to the school and Jacob's just like standing there like an NPC, and then he just like turns around, and the theater went wild just as he like turned around. And I was like, and me too. Like, I was like screaming, my little like 14-year-old ass. I was like, oh my God. And everybody, yeah, no, but he did. I had nothing to say. And of course, like, we know, like, he's like kind of lying because he's like, oh, like, I miss her. But like, I love it too. Like, I had nothing to say.
Because that is the real tea. Like, he's lying straight through his teeth.
100%.
Like, he is lying hardcore. But like the fact that he really went there, he gave us theater. You know what I mean? He gave us
did.
drama. And he said, I'm going to make her feel my wrath.
Yeah.
Like, Jacob wants to see her suffer.
Yeah.
I had nothing to say.
Mm-mm.
Like, no, he ate her. He ate her up with that. And the fact that Bella just stood there like, oh, like, what did you expect her to
Well, I have
say?
tons. Yeah.
No, her response, well, I have tons, is insane. Isn't that the scene also where she just gets on the bike and then they roll away?
Yes, and I love that scene, like when like she just like gets on the bike and he's like, hold on tight. Like, oh, it's so good. I
know.
love that scene. Like, you actually like you started off one of my faves.
Yes, and Edward's face, like, what, he can't do anything. What can
No,
he do?
yeah.
I'm also concerned that, like, is this the first time Bella's skipping class?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, Bella is giving Daredevil. Like, you said skip school. I guess I just gotta handle business. I was like, no, like, that scene is so funny to me. Also, like, another scene that I really liked was when, after they realize that someone has been in Bella's house, they team up with Jacob and Edward, for those who don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like, I feel like the pivotal moment, I feel like, where they really realize, like, oh crap, like, we might actually have to work together.
Yeah.
I feel like before then everything was very separate, but the realization is hitting them like hard. And I think it's just so funny to me that Edward has an attitude about it and he's like, we don't need your help.
Yeah.
But it's like, isn't Bella's protection supposed to be your number one priority?
No, 100%. And that was the thing. Like, Edward, I always say, like, he has this thing where like he like claims that the number one thing is like Bella's safety, but then he like will pull all these dramatic stunts that like prove that is not true. Like when he like F's off a New Moon to go live in a dumpster and he leaves her completely unprotected. Or when he's like, like, your safety is of utmost importance to me. And then like, it comes to like, well, what about like if I, hang out at the reservation with Jacob? He's like, no, like, it's like pulling teeth. So yeah, he's obscene for that.
Right. And it's like, wouldn't you think that theoretically being with Jacob would ensure her safety?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that any of these wolves are gonna rip her to shreds. Like,
yeah.
The Quillians like Bella. They don't
Yeah,
mind her being
and
around.
meanwhile, wasn't it just a few months ago when your crazy-eyed brother like tried to kill her at her birthday party?
Right.
Like
Like, you're worried about the wrong things here, babes.
yeah.
Like, you're totally worried about the wrong things here. And I feel like this is when we really truly get to see Edward's jealous side pop out. At this
Mhm.
point, I feel like he's been able to keep the maniac inside.
Yeah.
He's been able to really hold it at bay, but at this point, like Jacob is testing him and he can no longer hold it. And I feel like this movie is also my favorite in the aspect of like Edward's shield is cracking.
Yeah, it's definitely like peak like 2009 love triangle in Eclipse. Like that definitely like that movie has the most in terms of that. So that like I do totally get.
Right. Oh my god, that's such a great way to say it. Peak 2009 love triangle
It is. It's like
perfectly describes.
it's like all the like bad boy tropes and like the like jealousy and like the tent scene, like the like I am hotter than you. Like it's peak. It's peak. You know?
Like, no, like I think that this moment also gives Edward the most like humility that we've ever seen in him. And you're just like, oh, like at the end of the day, like he was once a boy. And at the end of the day, like we know that he's over 100 years old at this point. But theoretically speaking, because I'm a team Edward girly, I'm just like, "Ah, but he's only a man. Like it shows that he cares about her." So like me being delusional back in the day, like I took that as hot when in reality it is very controlling and possessive.
Yeah, but like no, I totally understand that. And like even like when I like, will say that about Edward, it's not that I don't understand where the Edward girlies are coming from, because like I always say this, I used to love Edward back in the day, like
Ooh.
in the very early days. Loved Edward to death. I loved them both. But I do totally get it, and I think when we're talking about this, like everything about it is like again like cringy, like 2009, like problematic boy trope love triangle. So like we're all like at the same time. I think the only thing that and because I think it's funny, but like I do think that people like have or at least they, especially on the internet, they have like a real like double standard when it comes to like Edward and Jacob, and that's why like I will criticize him a lot more, because like he deserves it more.
Yeah.
But I totally get that. Like believe me, I totally get it. Like
Right. I think this movie will really have you kind of being like, dang, like I really see both sides. Like I totally get the crazy possessive part at the same time, because at the end of the day, it's like they are only feelings. It's not like even though he's a vampire, like he still has feelings. And we understand he's jelly. But it's like, dude, if you're saying that you want to prioritize her protection, then it's like, why immediately just say no? Like, you need to
yeah.
step outside of yourself, buckle up, Buttercup, and realize that you're going to have to work with Jacob, sweetie.
Mhm.
Like, what? So
Yeah.
I just thought that part was like so funny. And then especially like fast forwarding to when they have to like really team up, and like now you see that they're working together. They're coming
Yeah.
up with a plan to strategize to protect Bella. Jacob pulls up and then they do like a drop off, and it just felt like she was with like her divorced parents
Yeah,
being like, all right,
it did. Like
this is
the
your
like
weekend with your dad.
okay, beautiful. Yeah, it really did. Yeah. It does. That's exactly what that scene gives.
Like it truly feels like Bella is a child of divorce. Well, she
Yeah.
is, but like
Yeah. Like round two.
right, yeah, that's like the perfect way to describe it. Like it was really giving round two, and then Edward gags me when he says, "Doesn't he own a shirt?"
You know what, Edward? Like, why don't you buy him one? Just like
Because you got the
seriously,
money.
like billionaire. Like you're talking about, like the impoverished 16-year-old. Like, can you please, like, with like all his money?
Right. Like, do him a favor then.
Yeah,
At this point, help him
get him
out.
one.
Like, what? I was like, oh my God, like, not Edward really saying that out loud. And then you really see, like, the pettiness comes out because then he starts making out with Bella right after. Like, talk about
Mm-hmm.
insecure.
Yeah.
I was like, no, Edward. Also, I really wanted to get into the moment where Bella she's able to sit with the tribe and talk about their different upbringing, their story on how they became the wolves and this whole thing. And when they talk about the third wife, stabbing herself in the stomach. Like, what is your take on that? Because I personally feel like, why is it written that way? Did she have to stab stomach? Couldn't we have
No,
done what Bella did and just gave like cut on arm?
yeah, I feel like Stephanie Meyer does this thing, again, like particularly with like female characters and particularly with her non-white characters, where like she makes everything as like graphic and traumatic as possible. And it definitely does give you pause. Like, I agree, the stabbing in the stomach is for sure a lot. I don't know that it had to be written that way. I definitely think she did it for like dramatic effect, which she tends to do, especially like with women in her stories, which is like interesting to think about.
Right. Like, it's truly just always giving damsel. It's just always giving the woman needs to be saved. Like, they're the one that's in distress.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this moment where she finally writes that the woman is the one to help in the situation, she
It's like,
causes her to kill herself. Like,
yeah, it's
girl,
like,
what?
yeah, exactly. Like,
I'm like, girl, you had one chance.
yeah, women are
You're
sacrificial is definitely like no, it's truly in so much of like I feel like it's like a theme throughout the saga. You know, it's like a strong woman's duty to like sacrifice is kind of like a theme that I get.
yeah. Oh my God, that's really, really interesting to think about. Like, the sacrifice of it all is insanity because you don't
Yeah.
see any of the other men having to make these sacrifices at any point throughout the movie. So why is it always the women that have to give up so much of themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Even when it comes to like Sam's girlfriend, the one I've always forget her name.
Emily.
Like,
Extremely. I always talk about that, and like it's the whole like Leah and Emily thing. It's like I feel like they really get like it's such just like a horrible narrative, both of them, because it's like Leah, you know, is just like subjugated and like treated so horribly, and then it's like Emily like gets the guy, but she gets her face mauled. Like she has to get her face mauled to get it. Like it's like okay.
like no matter what, it's gonna have suffering.
Yeah.
And the minimum requirement to be a woman in this storyline, some type of trauma.
100%.
If you're not traumatized, Stephanie doesn't want you.
Nope.
So like you said, like with the non-white characters of it all,
No.
it needs to be discussed. And I am glad that you brought that point up because once again, that aspect of it is like truly screaming in this movie, I feel.
It is.
Like you guys, she just clearly doesn't care. I was like,
No.
okay, the stomach moment. Like that's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Also, we're moving forward. I thought one moment that I thought was really funny was with the newborn army, because the newborn army of it all is a crazy concept. And I know that technically in this point, it's not new. There have been newborn armies before. Jasper quite literally has had experience in it, but this is our first time as an audience technically seeing it. So watching the newborn army and the breed tanner of it all is like insane. But I thought that one moment was so funny to me when one of the newborn chops the other newborn's head off over dinner. Like they're in the they're in the little alley situation.
Yeah.
Riley's with them, and he's just like, "No, what the heck?"
Yeah. And then like
Like
and then the part where Riley's like, "What did I say about a low profile?"
vile.
Yeah, it's another classic.
The way that Riley was stressed this whole
Yeah.
time.
Hey, you gotta feel bad for him, you know. He was just like a high school kid, you know. Like,
Right.
here comes this vampire. Like, good
Yeah,
job for you.
exactly. Like I didn't think about that with how young Riley could have been.
Mm-hmm.
And a part of me feels like what are your thoughts about the Riley and him being used in the whole newborn army situation?
I feel like really bad for him. I feel like he just like was a, you know, a casualty, like a pawn for sure. And I think like what gets me, I think the newborn army thing is like very interesting. I think the whole concept of it is interesting, and I remember like reading it the first time and thinking that that was like a good like actiony plot, because I tend to like not like actiony plots as much, but I did find that one interesting, and I think it's like one of the like best like worked out like theories in the saga.
Oh,
But
I
I think what
agree.
gets me is that like I will never get over how Victoria like, you know, ends up doing all that and meets her downfall over some like third rate guy like James. You know what I mean? Like she was doing it all for with that guy. Like, really? Like, girl, like, go live your life. Like,
Right.
I don't know.
Because what are your thoughts on like James and Victoria in itself? I personally don't think that James cared about Victoria that
He didn't,
much.
right? And if you read like in his like backstory, he never cared about Victoria as much as she cared about him. And the thing that kills me about Victoria is Victoria has this like super interesting backstory that's like pages and pages long that like was not even in the books. It's in the illustrated guide. I should talk
Yes.
about it because it's so interesting. And she has this gift where like she can like evade her enemies from like people who are like tracking her, basically like the opposite of like James's gift, right? Like he's like a tracker and she like can like avoid people who are like tracking her, and she like escaped all this stuff. She like overcame all this like horribly traumatic stuff in her life, and she wasn't like even an inherently like evil vampire. Like she was like a vampire obviously, so she ate people, but she was not like vengeful or anything until all this stuff happens with James. And it's like, he didn't even care about you, girl. Like like all that for him. Why?
Right. And that's one thing I want the audience to remember. If you guys have not read the illustrated guide, it's been a long time since I read it, but
Yeah,
it
it's
tells you a lot
crazy.
of good information and good details in that. So make sure you guys check that out. But I
Yeah.
think that's really a good perspective because I never thought about it that way, where like Victoria wasn't giving evil girly. She was not.
No,
She
like
was
not
just like,
like,
I'm here for me. I'm just here to
yeah,
survive.
exactly. She was like a survivor, and then like, she met her demise over James. Like tragic.
Which once again, I feel like this is the Stephanie Meyer of it all. The woman's got to
Yes.
sacrifice.
Yes, it's all got to be about a man.
If you aren't willing to
100%.
die, we don't want you. No, that's
No.
so effed up. Like
It
it's really
is
messed
like
up.
over a guy who never even actually cared about her like that. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, so I think that that's really interesting when you really see like Victoria actively those scenes where she is using this man. Oh,
Yeah.
I love you. We're supposed to be together, and it's just like.
Uh-huh.
Also, what are your thoughts on the new Victoria in this movie? How do you feel
So,
about that?
so I feel like I'm a little more like forgiving of it than most people are. I know that
Yeah,
everybody hates it. And I get it
I like her.
because I like her too. I think, I think she's like I will say that the Eclipse Victoria actually kind of is closer to how Victoria is in the books, I will say. So like one thing for her, and I do think Rochelle is like amazing in Twilight and New Moon, and I totally get why people love her and like love that Victoria because she has such a like cool vibe, and like she's very like
She's got a ruggedness
captivating.
to her
Yeah.
that I feel like is good. But this Victoria is like a
She's
sweet, sinister.
Yes, and that's more like what Victoria was described like in the book. I think she's like skittish,
Yeah,
and like almost like yeah, she's like a cat, like cat-like in the sense that she's like wide-eyed and skittish, and she's got this like doll kind of like look to her, which is very like book accurate. So I do get what they were doing, but I totally get it because people just like hate casting changes because it like throws them off. So I do understand that, but I think Bryce was good in the like. I never had like a huge issue with it. I thought like if a recast had to happen, I thought like it was a good choice.
yeah, she was so good at portraying the emotions, and it's like you really could feel the manipulation through the screen,
For
and like
sure.
she was playing up that innocent eyed look whenever she was with
Yeah.
Riley, and
Uh-huh.
it's just like, girl, if I was him, I probably would have fell for it too.
Yeah, 100%.
Like she is convincing, and she
Yeah.
used that sweet, like you said, cat like type of energy to hook him in,
Yes.
and it's like I can see why he was so easily manipulated.
100%.
So I we're here for the new
Yeah, I agree with you.
Victoria. Like
Hmm.
I think that both did what they needed to do.
I agree. I like both of them.
Yeah. Also, I think one part that I really stood out to me as well, that I wanted to get your opinion on is when Bella's dad is stressed out about the missing person with Riley, because I think that's one good aspect to put into it that I feel like Stephanie Meyer did eat with that, because there's chaos going on and someone needs to seem to care about this. And
Yeah, I
Charlie
think
does.
I do. And I think, one thing that like, I think you have to say about Charlie is Charlie really like he brings the like humanity like down into it, like the like normal human stuff, and it definitely like tugs at your heart. Like it makes me like when he says like like, well, I wouldn't give up if it were you. Like it makes me sad. It makes you think about like how Bella's just gonna go like f off and die,
And that's exactly what I put in my note. I said,
Yeah.
Bella says, do you think that the parents should give up? Charlie says, no, I wouldn't stop if I were you. I
Gets
mean,
me
if
every
it were
time.
you. And then Bella's like, well, back to the plan. Because in the
Exactly.
very next
Like,
scene, she's talking about, I got to figure out why to tell people I won't be at Christmas. And then Edward's like, well, after a few decades, everyone, will die.
be
So
dead. And
whatever.
it's like, I'm like, ugh, that's awful.
Right. It's like, I think this truly just shows like the menace inside of Bella. Cause it's like, girl, do you really care the way you say you care? Like you can
Yeah.
see that she feels bad, but it's not bad enough.
Because it's like that, vampire obsession that, and I always talk about this too. It's like something I talk about a lot, that the Twilight vampires, like as written, they are like irresistible to humans. And I don't, there's no examples, right? If you look into like the books and the backstory of like once a vampire pursues a human, they always just like worship them. It seems to just like be inherent to them. So I feel like whatever Bella did, like she was going to be like, goo obsessed with Edward and like put him above anything. But definitely, like, it's like, she's like, yeah, I gotta think what I have to tell people.
Like,
Like,
girl, that is, I
yeah.
just felt like that was just so cold.
Yeah.
That was so cold.
Yeah,
I can't think of anything other word to say. That was sick.
yeah. I think I always say Bella behaves like an addict when it comes to like Edward and the
Yes.
vampires. Like, it's like that comes first and she like starts acting crazy. Like, she can be acting normal one minute and then when like that comes up, she's like, well, F everything else.
Right. She was like, okay, well, I got to take a hit. Bye,
Mm-hmm.
Dad.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on like Edward's comment? Do you think that he was just like kind of being a little petty when he said that? I always
About the
think about
like
his like
in a
oh
few
in a couple
decades.
yeah.
I feel like the kindest reading I would give him is like maybe he was trying to say like, you shouldn't do it now. Then like I think that he was trying to say like, well, this is how shitty it is kind of thing. But I
Right.
also feel like, he doesn't really get that many points for me because he's the one who like created that situation in the first place. And but like I
Right.
think
Like you pursued her. What else did you think she was gonna want?
exactly like you knew what was gonna happen. But I do think that he probably was trying to say like, don't. That's another reason not to do it. But like, at that point his plan is like pretty much moot. So
Right. I was just like, Edward, okay, thanks. That's so comforting. Great.
yeah.
Way to comfort your girl. Like, well, he'll be
Yeah.
dead anyway. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God, like something about that just felt so emotionless. But I think that was
Yeah.
his point. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, girl, this is your consequence. So, like you said, I think he was trying to like really get her to see this is effed up. You should not want this.
Yeah,
You're
it's
gonna
permanent.
die. Yeah. And then I think that the next scene that I love so much after that is when they have that moment where she's like talking to him about the situation, doesn't know what to do with potentially everyone in her life dying in a few decades. And then that you'll always be my Bella, just less fragile. Oh my God. I am seeing stars.
Oh my
I said, I have to talk about this moment because this exact moment solidified. Like, I already knew for sure I was Team Edward, but mind you, Teen Delusion at the time. Oh,
God. Yeah.
I was like,
I get that. It's like it's definitely like it's definitely one of his like sweeter lines. I get it. It's
right. Because at the end of the day, like, Edward's not going to give you too many sweet moments because he's a raging maniac. But the
yeah.
few cute moments that slip through, I see why Bella is possessed.
Oh my
Because
god.
that moment got me like them in bed,
Oh.
knowing that he's probably freezing.
Yeah,
Bella said,
that
I
like
don't
kills
care.
me. Like I could never. Oh my god, could you imagine? You just like it's just like a rock. Like why do I have a man around then? Like please.
Right. Like she's shivering in bed. And he's like,
Yeah,
you'll always
like
be my Bella.
please.
Oh my God. My Bella just less fragile. It gives me chills. It gives me chills every single time.
Aw.
If you guys have not seen that scene or watched that movie, like you got to report back in the comments and let me know what you think about that moment. Because because I think that's going to solidify it for you. If it doesn't move you, then you're a Team Jacob Gurley for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then like we move on and So at that point, Edward's just like, okay, well, like we're pretty sure she might become a vampire. But at this point, Jacob is still fighting for my girl. He's like, no, I don't care about you being less fragile. I want you to stay the same. And he says, you wouldn't have to change for me, Bella, or say goodbye to anyone. I can give you more than him. That gets me though. What are your thoughts on that line?
I
Should
think
Jacob have given up at this point, or is he right for continuing
no,
to
I
give
think
her
he's
these
absolutely
points?
right, and I think what I think what a lot of people miss about like Jacob is that like Bella wasn't. It's not like Bella was like running off with Mike Newton. Like Bella was literally she dies. Like Bella literally dies gruesomely in front of him at the end, and like that is like Bella is no longer alive when she like becomes a vampire, and of course like Jacob and rightfully so because he's not wrong about any of those things, like has grown up and like has been taught to like fear and like hate these people, and rightfully so. They like ruined his life and his community's life and like sucked the life out of her, so she's gonna like go die. And like so I feel like even of course he like is in love with her and he has romantic feelings for her, but like this is like his best friend and they go way back, like, and I think like if your friend is like doing something irrational like that, like I don't understand why people think that like the right thing would be like to not try, right? And that doesn't mean that like everything he did was like right in attempts to do so, but of course like I think people are crazy when they say like that he shouldn't have tried, as if like she was just like, because it's not like she had some like normal regular boyfriend, like it was so much more than just like, oh, you want him and not me. Like it really wasn't like that. And I think, even Stephanie herself says this, is that like Jacob's like motivation is that he thinks that if he can get Bella to realize that she has feelings for him too, which she does, right? Like that she might change her mind and live, because that's the only like card he has to play. He doesn't have 100 years of experience or money or supernatural powers of attraction, to help him. So that's like the only card he has to play, and it's like very tragic when you think about it, because Jacob was so young. It just makes me sad, and then think about like what happened in the end. It's just sad. Jacob is just like a
Right.
tragic character.
That is just too young to go through the trauma that Bella is bringing
Yes.
on his life. Like, if I
Yes.
were him, I don't know, it's just so hard to put yourself in this situation when I'm Team Edward, but at the same time, when it comes to being Team Jacob, it's like, dang, like, I really feel him.
Yeah,
Like you
it's
said,
like
like, this is your bestie. Like, you don't want her to pass. And even though technically she'll still be here, he's
yeah.
like, it won't be the same.
No, like and she like that's like your like mortal enemy, right? And I think like especially like in the earlier films, right? Like that he's very scared he's going to be under a mandate to kill her. You know what I'm saying? Like if
Right.
that happens, like could you imagine? Like that's just horrifying.
Yeah. So I do get his desperation here. And I
Yeah,
do
it's
see why a lot of people are
desperation.
like, oh, he should give it up. Because theoretically, like, if you had a friend and that was Jacob, I would be telling him, like, do not be worried about this girl. But at the same time, since he's like only a person and with human,
Yeah,
emotions and feelings, he can't help but to continue to try. So
100%.
it just sucks either way.
Yeah.
It really does. And I really feel for him here, him begging and pleading, but then he turns around and kisses Bella without her consent.
Yeah, that of course again not not acceptable, right? Not like and I think, and I always say like I don't think that that is okay. I don't think I don't defend that, but like what I always talk about when it's brought up is the fact that number one, from a Doyleist lens, Jacob is not real. He is a, fictional native 16-year-old that was written, specifically pitted against like a wealthy like white hero by a white woman, right? Who like specifically uses that scene to, glorify Edward, because what happens is Edward gets to swoop in and be the hero and be like, don't you ever touch her again. And that's like a very textbook racist trope that you see again and again. And that doesn't mean that it's okay. Like that doesn't mean that he was right for that, because he certainly wasn't. But then I think, if you want to think about Twilight critically enough to criticize that and say like in the real world that's not okay, you can't kiss people without their consent, that's totally okay. But then I think that you should also examine from like a real world lens like why it was written that way, and the fact that like Jacob was a child and Edward was not. Like that doesn't make it okay, right? But he's also been assigned with, uncontrollable rage and aggression as like part of his transformation, which is something that she like assigned to the werewolves, and therefore like only her native characters, right? And that's
racist
it's
too.
very racist. It's very racist, right? So that, you know, and that's why I tend to have like a more like nuanced view on like Jacob's, especially like post transformation stuff. It doesn't like it doesn't mean that I like think it's okay. Obviously, like God willing, that would not be written today. But I think, you know, for people who, and obviously like you aren't like this, and like I have so many Team Edward besties, but for people who, you know, will write pages, you know, paragraphs in my comment section explaining why it was totally okay for, you know, old man Glitterbag to stalk a teenager, break into her bedroom, disable her car, you know, and everything else, and then, you know, clutch their pearls and say, God forbid, about Jacob. That's, I think we have to examine what the double standard is.
Right. It is giving double standard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that at the end of the day, like, Edward does need to be held accountable here. Like, at the end of the day, Jacob is the one that's a teenager and he's going through these first crush
Yes.
teenage emotions. Like, you should know better. So to not give him grace
Yeah.
pretty much until the very end is effed up. And
Yeah,
the only reason why
100%.
Edward
It's
gave
just,
Jacob grace is because Bella chose him. So he's like, I'm
mm-hmm.
not tripping.
Yeah. 100%. And it's like, it's kind of embarrassing when you think about it that he's like beefing with like a kid. Like,
Right.
it's like none of his, like, it's kind of embarrassing for him. And it's like, you know, and it's like impossible to ignore like the very like racist undertones to it, you know, like he's like saying, you know, don't like, if you ever touch her again, mutt, like all this stuff. And it's like,
Right.
dude, like says the guy who like disabled her car, broke into her bedroom. Like, you want to talk about consent? Like now, you know, she acknowledges consent one time throughout the books, right? And it's in the form of like a very like, you know, age old racist trope. So it's just kind of like, okay, like I think we should be like talking about other things if we're talking about consent. Like, yes, but what about everything else as well, you know?
Yeah, and that's when it gets so complicated. And especially, I'm going to always say again, for me, is being a Team Edward girly, because I think that the next scene is extremely hot, even though it's racist.
I love the honesty, honestly. Like, I love it.
I'm going to be here on this platform to tell my truth. And this is my
same.
truth.
I
When
completely
Edward
agree,
runs
same.
up on Jacob and says, "You ever," and then like puts his hand on Jacob's shoulder, Jacob whips the hand off shoulder. I was like, oh my God. I'm melting. I'm freaking melting. This is hot.
Edward,
If you ever touch her against her will again,
don't do this.
she's not sure what she wants.
Don't do this
Let me
here.
give you a clue. Wait for her to say the words,
Fine.
and she will.
Jacob, just go, okay?
Hey. Easy, guys. Easy. Let's take it down a notch. All right?
Look, like, you know, at least you know yourself. At least, like, you know, you're saying it straight up. I respect that.
Right. So it's like at the end of the day, we are here to tell the tea and talk about what's wrong with this, but at the same time, the girl in me just like can't help it. Like, I'm
I
just
get
the
that.
girl. Like, what?
I get that.
And then like Charlie coming out and being like, "What the frick is the problem, guys?"
No,
It's just,
I get
it feels
that. That's
so
like
teenage boy.
no, I get that, and that's like me with the Jacob and Bella like mountain kiss. Like,
Oh yes.
was the lead up problematic? Yes. Was it ridiculously hot? Also,
Right.
yes.
Two things can be true at the same time.
Exactly.
And I think that is like the premise of this movie. Two things
Yes.
can be true at the same time. It's giving
Absolutely.
racism, it's
Absolutely.
giving deep rooted issues here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like we're only human.
We're just girls.
Right. I'm just a girl. I was like, no, please. Like that scene is so, oh my God. And then also, like you said, with the whole like Jacob and Bella kiss, like the mountain one, crazy. But then you have
Yeah.
right after the one where he kisses her fracturing her hand. That's crazy too. I feel like
Yeah.
Stephanie was just like, I gotta add in a sprinkle a little bit more. Like, not only did he kiss her, but she broke her hand. So now we really have a reason to like blame this mutt.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, girl, okay. And this
Mhm.
is the part where like was it when Carlisle like helps her hand up and then Emmett's just like
Trying to
wow.
walk and chew gum at the same time, Bella. Yeah.
Rosalie was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which I totally get Rosalie here.
Mhm, me
Like,
too,
don't
my
be
girl.
kikiing with this girl. She's the
Yeah.
enemy.
Yeah.
Like what?
For
Because I
real.
totally would feel that same way. Like if my husband knew how I felt about this person and you're just still trying to joke around, like I'd be pissed. Like, no, if I don't like her, you shouldn't like her. So I
Yeah.
kind of feel like Rosalie's pettiness there. But at the same time, Rosalie's feelings are valid. I'm always gonna
100%.
be here to ride for Rosalie.
Me too. That's my girl.
Yes. So it's like
Mhm.
somebody has to clock the tea on Bella being
Yep.
strange.
Uh-huh.
Somebody has to
100%.
say it. So
Somebody
I
had to say
always
something.
yeah. So I always think that
She
that moment
tried.
is so funny. And then also like the moment where Jane is acknowledging the newborns. What are your thoughts on that? I said, girl, you pulled up, you saw the newborns, and you letting them play around for a bit. I feel like it's petty.
Definitely petty. And then the other thing that I can't get past is like her makeup. Like
Yeah.
the like
Yeah.
it's just like so like hard to ignore. But definitely Jane was definitely just like being like very messy. And she was just like having like a time, and then she was also like worried that she was like gonna get in trouble with Aro because I think she just like wanted to like enjoy the show,
Right.
honestly.
And she's
To
like,
like entertain herself.
I'm finally in the driver's seat here. Let me have my
Yeah, because you
moment.
gotta remember that Jane is like, I know she's like, 5 million years old, like literally she's like one of the oldest ones, but she's like 12 in the books. So
Yeah.
so it's like she's like at the end of the day, like she was just kind of like, this is interesting, like she was just trying to entertain herself.
As she
I
says in the
think,
most bored way possible.
yeah.
I was like, girl, you know what's going on. And then the petty moment when they finally have like the newborn fight, and then the Volturi pulls up, and then Carlisle was like, yeah, if they known about it, like you would have did something, right, Jane? Like
Yeah,
when he clocked her like that, she's
yeah,
like, of course. Like, girl, you know you're
yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
I was like, oh my God, no. And then, like you said earlier, we have the moment where they have the fight, they're hiding out, and then Bella is literally about to die. She's about to die in this tent from a freezing cold death. And the
Mhm.
I am hotter than you line.
Let's face it, I am hotter
Oh,
than you.
oh my God. Like, that gets me too, because Jacob does look really good in that scene.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's peak. I honestly have always been a tent scene enthusiast. I think it's so like,
Yes.
and I think it's like so like cute. I don't know. I can't. You know me, and like I remember like vividly when before the movie came out, and like you'd be on the forums like looking for like articles and stuff about like pictures and stuff, and there was this article on this one website where Stephanie was talking about how the tent scene was one that she like made them reshoot a couple times because like
Ooh.
Jacob and the director like wasn't having like Jacob and Bella like be like close enough, and I was like, okay, Stephanie, like,
She said, no, I want her on top of him.
yeah. Yeah, and I was like, okay, Steph.
Get it right. Like, they
Yeah.
gotta be locked
Like
in for
this, yeah.
real. You know what? Stephanie ate with that. I'll give her
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I will give her that. Because if that's the tea, that's why that
Mhm.
scene eats so much.
Yeah.
Because Stephanie said, I had quite literally had a vision, and you need to give me that vision right now.
100%.
I was like, oh my God. And then that's like there's the dynamic between Edward and Jacob, and him being like, well, if you weren't trying to, steal my existence for a living, like, I might like you. And then Jacob's like, no. I was like,
Jacob's like,
wait.
yeah, I'm offended that you like would insinuate that there's any universe in which I liked you, dude. Like, I'm
You could think of
offended.
1,000 different universes and a million different Earths, and I
I
still would
still
hate you.
Yeah. Like, no.
I
Can't
said,
relate.
Jacob, stand on business with that, Jacob.
Yeah.
I know that's right. I was like,
Mhm.
wait, he got him there. And then Edward's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, that was so interesting. And then also, like, I think that one big moment that I wanted to talk about too in this movie was right when there's crisis going on with the newborn fight. Everyone can't continue to keep staying in one place. Jacob's like, okay, maybe I have to go fight. I got to do my part in this. And I feel like Jacob and Edward are both being manipulative here, because then you have Edward purposely calling her Mrs. Cohen when he knows that Jacob can hear. Jacob
Mhm.
turns around and says, well, maybe I should get myself killed to make it
Mhm.
simple. Both of you are being crazy.
Yeah, 100%. And I always bring this up too. So like in the book, Jacob is actually like Bella actually says that to Jacob first, like earlier in the book, and that's like where he gets like the idea and like the phrasing from. Like she says like, maybe I'll get hit by a truck on my way home and I'll make it easy for you. So like, and I was like, damn, I was like, they kind of did him dirty there because he was like still definitely like, you know, not ideal, right? But
Right.
I was like, they kind of did him dirty because like he was kind of just like fighting Bella's words back at him. But 100%, like, and again, like Stephanie really like she loves her overkill with that. Was it like also very hot? Yes.
Right.
Like, is the kiss hot? Like, yes. But yeah, no, it was definitely crazy, like on both sides.
It is. I was just like, okay, so you're telling me that you're purposely gonna yeet yourself out there in danger just to spite me right now? Like, relax. And it's like, at the end of the day, I do understand where Bella's coming from. Like, what else could she have done other than say, kiss me?
Yeah.
Because, like, at the end of the day, you are bestie, no matter what percent of romantic feelings I have. It's like, I feel like with Bella, if you think about 0 to 100% of, like, romantic feelings, she's like 25%. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Yes.
Okay, so I think this is my biggest gripe with the Eclipse film is they cut out like Jacob and Bella's like romantic moments. Like they in the book they're like she's like 100% in love with Jacob and there's this whole like this is my biggest I talk about this all the fucking time. Okay, so there is this moment where Bella like envisions like her whole like future with Jacob and like,
I
she
do
pictures,
remember
like,
that in the
children
book
and all this stuff and she's like talking about how she's in love with him and they filmed it and then they like never released the footage, cut it out of the film. And then there's also this scene like when she goes to see him like when he gets hurt and she's like telling him that she's like in love with him and it's like one of my favorite scenes. But yeah, I get from the movie, like, I think, like, in the movie, like, you can see that she, like, does have feelings for him. But, like, that's, like, probably my biggest gripe with Eclipse as a film, because I feel like they try to, like, make, they made it, like, a lot more one-sided. So I get that.
Yeah, like I totally agree. And I forgot about that scene in the book. It's been for even longer since I've read the books.
Yeah.
But like in movie universe, it's giving she only cares about him at the 25%. But you're right. Book, she's all in.
Yeah.
Especially when you see that blossoming in New Moon.
Yeah.
And how unwell she is when Jacob gets mono.
Yeah.
She freaks out. She's like, oh God.
Yeah,
like,
she's
what happened to my
launch an
support?
investigation. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is insanity. So I feel like it is kind of messed up at, you know, Edward being petty, Jacob being petty. Like, you should not really use death as a type of get back moment. But your point is right, where he's basically just spitting it back at her.
Right, like I just like, and that doesn't make it like right when he does it. But I think they did him a little dirty because like in the book that was like a like, or maybe I'll just kill myself. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because she had like done it. So
right. Okay, so I think the last moment that I wrote down about this movie that I thought was pretty funny was when Riley gets dragged around by Seth. I think that was Seth, right?
Oh, yes.
And then gets his hand bitten off and he has a nub and he's like, Victoria, Victoria. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, that
like
one
when
is
I tell you, I pause the scene every freaking time I watch it.
No, that's
because
valid.
It's like no shade to anyone who like doesn't have a hand, but in this moment,
yeah, no,
it's pretty funny because
especially
like,
the way it looks, because it looks like a freaking like ice pop thing.
Yeah,
like,
it's like concrete or something on the inside. It looks like, and you're just like, that is ridiculous. You've never seen a nub look like that. So if it was a human, like, yeah, I'd feel bad, but in this situation, it's just like this crazy vampire. Oh my God!
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts on the betrayal of it all during that scene?
Again, like I felt bad for Riley. I feel like, you know, he was just a kid. He got like way in over his head. But you know what I always think about, like about Seth in that scene? During that whole like tense scene that's happening, Seth is just like outside, like having to listen to Edward and Jacob like bitch fight in the like that. And he's probably like, my poor ears.
I never think about that.
Yeah,
I
like,
never think about
like,
that.
oh God.
Oh God, that's like secondhand embarrassment. I would be like, please, dude, can I be stationed somewhere else?
Yeah.
Send somebody else in. I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I feel so bad, but I think that was like a really nice moment to be able to have Seth there because he's just like, I feel like I'm part of the, the group. I'm contributing.
Yeah.
I'm doing something, and I'm like, good on him.
Yeah, we love
Because
Seth.
yeah, like he tore him up, and then it's just like, of course, the fight between Edward and Victoria alone. Once we get to that final climax, is also hot. I'm
I know. All the
sorry.
Edward girlies love that. They love when he like rips his shirt and then like ties her.
What a
They love
gentleman.
that.
After all of that, you come and you're worried about me. Like, yes, let me clean up. Like, I love it. Like, oh my God. It's just something so good about that. Especially like in New Moon. I'm always gonna say, like, when he has his moment in the with the Volturi, when we get to see Edward in action, it's not too often. It's like, wow, like you really see what he's capable of. And it's just like, I'm just like Bella. I'm
Oh
jaw on
my
the
God.
floor. Like, whoa, what was that?
Oh my God.
Oh man. And then it's like Jacob ended up getting injured, all the bones in his body being shattered. What the heck?
Yeah. And then
Stephanie, you had to go there?
yeah, 100%. And then, to add insult to injury, they cut their whole like, intimate and it's 14 pages of dialogue that Bella and Jacob have
Yes.
when she goes to see him. And that was all cut from the film to like 3 sentences.
Yep.
Pisses me off.
3 pathetic sentences at that. I was like, girl, you
Yeah.
can't do more than that.
No, seriously. Like I do like when like she says like till my heart stops beating and he says maybe even then, which cuz like it always does get me, but like we really were robbed. Like I can't.
Yeah, I truly do understand where you're coming from. And I think that this entire talk has like really given me more perspective about like what is lacking with Team Jacob here.
Yeah.
Because a 14-page cut is insanity.
Yeah, like they just like totally obliterated that conversation. I was like, okay.
Right.
And the like vision of their future, like both like double homicide.
Yeah. I always wonder what would have happened if the Volturi wasn't in their petty bag that day and like let them keep Jane.
Yeah.
I mean, Bree.
I knew
Yeah.
what you meant. Yeah.
Like, why does she have to go? Jeez Louise.
I know, that was unfortunate.
I know.
For Bree.
Like she
She's
seems
just a kid,
so
too.
sweet.
Yeah.
I gotta
Bree.
reread that book.
Yeah, it's like the fun thing about that is that it has all this like cursed lore about the vampires. Like that's where we get the them like sticking their limbs back together, and that's where we get the information about how like when they kiss it sounds like freaking like mugs clanking together.
Like the world that she's built with vampires kind of just going against every traditional thing that we've ever known with vampire lore is super interesting.
I agree.
So you guys haven't read that, like make sure you read Bree's book because it's a good perspective and a good insight, and I'm kind of glad that kind of added a little bit of more variety in that moment. And I think it just shows that like Carlisle, when it comes to his cult, he's like, I'm gonna try to bring in as many people as possible.
Yes, that's 100%. Like he is the cult leader. He's like, Carlisle, when he sees a dying teenager, not on my watch.
Right.
Like an attractive dying teenager. This looks like a job for me.
Oh my God. I just always wonder like what about it makes him be this way? Like what is the fascination of it? Saving these dying teens. Like how big were you expecting your coven to get?
I feel like he wanted to create like his like own version of like a nuclear family because he had a lot of like religious guilt and stuff from his father.
Right.
So and I also believe, as I always say, that he had a like 20-year long romantic affair with Aro. And
wait.
So you know how Carlisle spends 20 years with the Volturi?
Right.
I have always said him and Ara were 100% having an affair. Because like there's no reason that he kept Carlisle around. Carlisle doesn't even have a gift like that would be useful to the Volturi. He just saw him and was like, this guy's pretty. You know what? And Carlisle, he was like, I'm just saying, and that's kind of why they have like the fondness for. That's why like he has the painting in his house. That's why he was letting Carlisle like write laws, and I could just see like the other ones being like, oh my God, Aro and his boy toy, and they were having a whole affair. I will like forever say that. And then so Carlisle he has to go to, you know, America to create like his own like weird undead Frankenstein Sims nuclear family, and that's how
Right.
we end up with the Cullens. But he was for sure having an affair with RO.
And
I will
honestly,
die
I
on that
think
hill.
that explains that would. Okay, that's such a good theory. What the heck? That is such a freaking good theory. Because it's like I do think that could really be possible because Arrow has given the Cullens a lot of grace,
Mm-hmm. It's
way
because,
too much grace, if you
and I
will.
always say, like, yes, he's interested in, like, you know, Edward's gift and Alice's gifts. I think at the end of the day, he's interested in getting his man back. You know, I think that's
T.
why he's always he's always like toying with the Cullens, like, ooh, like he wants an excuse
Oh my
to like
god,
get his man back.
you just blew my mind with that. Oh, that's such a good theory. That's such a good theory. Okay, guys. Well, there you have it. Arrow just wants his man back. That's what this all is really about. Oh my gosh. Well, are there any other like things that you want to add to the, you know, about the movie or anything like that?
Just that, you know, if they happen to be listening, again, Lionsgate, whoever it is, please release the Jacob and Bella future vision footage. There's no reason that like I can't see it. Okay, how many years has it been? Y'all filmed it. Just release it. Like, ugh.
There's no reason why it shouldn't have been on like the anniversary DVD or something.
Seriously, that's what I'm saying. Like, how many anniversaries have there been now? Like, please
Right.
put it on YouTube or something, or just send me a DVD. Like, I don't care.
Please, to her house. One of the
Seriously,
fans has to have it.
Just somebody has to have it. I know. David Slade, I know you have it somewhere. Just send it over.
David,
Yeah,
we're talking to you.
Seriously. David, I've been
I'm sure he
addressing you.
does. I'm sure he does.
100%. The footage is somewhere, and I need to see it.
Exactly. Oh my God. Well, it has been a pleasure talking with you. I just love your insights that you give, like I said, on your TikTok. So let the girlies know where they can find you.
Okay, so my name on everything is Corinne with 5 E's, and I'm sure Kristen will link it, as nice as she is. And so that's TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter now. I'm now on Twitter.
Ooh.
So yeah, and I'm working on getting on YouTube. It just like is overwhelming, but I'm working on it. But
It
yeah,
is.
same name everywhere.
Awesome. Make sure you guys tap in. She's always dropping gems. And I appreciate you so much for coming on. Give this video a like, comment, subscribe. I'm on my road to my first 200 subscribers. So I'm loving that. And make sure you give me a review to let me know what you think about this episode. What other series do you want me to cover and everything like that. And with that, I will see you guys next week. Bye.
Foreign cars, I make rich look richer. Save your breath, baby, I'm not going home with y'all.